Yo, yo, what's good, party people? This is Zach Hollenber, and this is my update of the self-care, mindfulness, and self-love journey to heal my stomach issues. If you didn't see part one of this, basically I got some stomach issues that were kind of caused by bad bacteria in Bali, but mostly caused by stress, chronic stress over time. And I made that video a couple weeks ago, and I was in pretty rough shape and I'm really excited to share with you guys all the stuff that I have to update you on. Um, but the first thing I want to address is that I didn't really follow up with my 1 week, one video thing. And I want to address that because I think it's really important on your self-care journey that you learn how to value goals for the action they make you take and not actually hitting the goal necessarily. So, my goal is to produce more content, but when you're coming from a loving place, if you don't do something, it might just not be the right time. And I realized I just need a little bit more space to focus on healing before I want to get back to this. There's also some resistance there. So that's the flip side. The resistance is I feel afraid to show myself. I feel afraid to talk about this sort of thing because I think it makes me sound like a pussy or something. And there's a voice that says that. But what I've realized is important is to just get with the creating because that means that I am moving through vulnerability or the resistance through vulnerability. And yeah, I just think this is really important stuff that a lot of people are thinking about. And I'm not claiming to be an expert, but I've definitely seen some really dope shit over the last couple weeks I want to share with you. Um, and I'll also be sharing in this session. This is going to be kind of like a wild card, but the main two things we're going to be talking about, maybe three things. Number one, we'll start with like how to structure your self-care, basically how to make it easier, and what to do when you fail. And then number two, I want to share some books that have been really helpful for me over the past few weeks in managing stress and just feeling more loving towards myself. And number three, I want to talk about just this idea of changing yourself to become a more compassionate and loving person towards yourself and how you can do that in a way that it sets it up on like autopilot where it just happens. Um, and the final thing, okay, so it's not the final thing, it's the first thing. We're jumping into how to make stuff easy. And I'm going to show you some ways here. So one thing I've been realizing recently is that when you approach self-care from this mindset of like rigid and discipline and like I'm so cool, like I'm gonna be the best self-care person ever, I'm so fucking cool. When you do that kind of stuff, you're basically just like shooting yourself in the foot because you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. And what I've realized is that instead of having these, really tiny goals that you can for sure hit, which is still a good strategy, a really good way to make your self-care habits such as meditation, walking, exercising easier is to inject some more fun into them. And I'm going to give you two examples, one that I've done in the past and one that I'm going to do right now. So one thing I've done in the past when I'm trying to get my meditation in, and I'll give you a little spoiler, one thing that's really helped over this past few weeks has been to do an hour of mindfulness training. There's only about 20 minutes of actual, oh no, I lost my joint. I'm going to reveal that in a second, guys, don't worry. Not even high yet. But basically, after doing this hour of mindfulness, I find that I am just feeling way better. And I found that no matter how I get in that hour, it helps me. So for example, one thing I did in the past was I put on like really good music and I smoked a little bit and then I just settled into my meditation. And instead of being like really strict and sitting on the floor with my Zen fucking will and focusing on the breath, I did other types of meditation, such as focusing on sound and listening to good music. And that's something that I'm learning more and more as I go on this journey is that there's many different types of meditation and mindfulness and there's different practices that are way better for you at different times. And we'll maybe talk about that at the end. I don't want to spoil too much, but whatever thing you're trying to do right now to make your life more compassionate towards yourself, whatever habit you're trying to adopt, see if you can find a way to make it fun and easy and not like a big deal. So that's what I'm doing with this video. I was like, all right, fuck it. Like my room, it's fine. It's not like the best video environment. It's nighttime. This lighting's shitty. I'll have to get like a better lighting setup at some point. But the whole point of self-care and self-love is to be like flexible and soft and to pivot. And that's where there's a lot of actual strength that comes from being soft. Because when you're soft, as in like not attached to one particular way of doing things, it lets you be much more nimble throughout your day. And it's something I've been dealing a lot with recently because my energy's been lower because of this stomach illness. And there's been a ton of times where I'm like, oh, I want to do this, but like I'm super tired right now. And what I found is the most effective is just to be like, hey, I love you, Zach. Let's find a way to get the same outcome or give you what you need right now and not beat yourself up over failing to live up to this ideal. So what I'm doing right now, and we're going to do on here, I live in Denver, so this is legal. We're going to smoke a little J. Well, actually, it's like a tobacco-free blunt. It's a palm tree blunt. Really nice. And the reason I'm doing this is A, because I like smoking, but also just I don't want this channel to be really serious. And I think I've been building it up so much. Like, it's really serious subject matter. Like, I felt like I was worthless or like crushing anxiety. But I think one of the things that the mental health area needs is just a little bit more fun, as weird as it sounds. Like, it's not fun when you're dealing with this stuff. And I'm not claiming that you should be like able to have fun at any moment. But I've found that if I can add lightness to whatever day I'm going through, even if it's like gallows humor, it really, really helps. It really helps you just not like, melt under the pressure of stress and this COVID pandemic and all the crazy shit. Yeah. And in case you think I'm just whining, I'm a crazy person. A, everybody's emotions are valid, no matter what. But B, it's been a tough year, as I imagine it has been for a lot of people. I'm sure if you're listening to this, okay, so this is February 2021. It's been roughly a year since COVID hit. And I think it's safe to say for me, this has been the hardest year of my life. My dad almost died. I've had the stomach issue for about a year. I've never been sick like this before. And I think a good lining is coming out of this, this silver lining of moving into this different space of loving and being compassionate. Well, not different space, but kind of reconnecting with that because I feel like I lost it a little bit. So yeah, that's a good thing about this. Okay, so again, we're rambling. This is a chill sesh. I know that only like the hardcore people are probably going to watch this, or maybe just like my mom or like a cat or something. Like a cat looking at YouTube and just like not understanding what the words I'm saying. But I still like talking to cats because it's fun. So let's smoke a little bit. Well, I should have got that lighter sound like rappers. They light it like real close to the microphone. Yeah. Can you believe that people go to jail for this shit? People in Texas are serving like life sentences for weed. I got to say, man, politics is a whole other thing, but doesn't make sense to me. Doesn't make sense. All right. This is not the weed show. So put that down for a sec. And let's dig in to the next idea, which is these 2 to 3 books that have been helping me a lot recently. I think that sometimes when you are going through a really tough time, it's hard to remember that everything in your life is influencing you. So, for example, the books you read or don't read, the social media you go on or don't go on, the videos, any content or ideas that come in your mind they affect you. They affect you in very real ways. And I've noticed this myself where if I'm just like looking at social media a bunch and I'm not reading or at least listening to audiobooks or something that's going to make my life better, I literally feel more stupid. It makes my attention go away. And this isn't to get into something about that and like willpower and attention. But the point I'm making is that if you're in a tough spot right now, just the act of kind of listening to these audiobooks or reading these can be really good for you. And I'll recommend which form for each one. But it's just kind of like this positive resource that's really easy to access. And when you're in a really tough spot, like I had a day 2 weeks ago where I was like, losing my shit, maybe 3 weeks ago. It helps so much. I can't remember how long it's been since the last video, but to update you on what's happened since then with these books, basically it was a really stressful time, and I was like emotionally, I feel like I'm going to die if I don't change some stuff here. Kind of physically too, because my body's still sick from the stomach bug. Stress makes it worse, so it's this cycle. And I was like, okay, I'm going to commit to an hour of mindfulness training per day. And for me, what that's been looking like is going on a walk, meditating at the midpoint of the walk and then walking back. And there's no music or anything while I'm doing that. I do use guided meditations right now by Sam Harris and the Waking Up app. Really good. As well as some guided meditations in the first book I want to mention. And I do listen to mindfulness audiobooks sometimes when I'm walking. It's Radical Compassion by Tara Brach. I could be mispronouncing her name, but I just want to say that she does a really excellent job of blending together this mindful perspective along with some things that aren't necessarily like scientifically mindful, because like there's the secular mindfulness movement, but mindfulness, there's a lot of traditions it comes from, but a big one that mindfulness comes from is the Buddhist tradition. And so I think she blends together some of the good like folklore of the Buddhist religion, as well as a lot of plainly explained but very cutting edge concepts in psychotherapy. So for example, one thing in her RAIN technique, which she goes into, this very practical technique that I've been using a ton, and it's a very practical book, which is why I'm recommending this one first. It basically, she has a method called the RAIN method, which encapsulates a lot of different schools of thought when it comes to your own experience of the world, your mental health, and she gives you a really practical way to apply it. So I would highly recommend that one. My number one takeaway from the book is just that if you are truly able to give yourself the gift of, just like accepting and being compassionate towards your own emotions, it's transformative. Like, you could have the same experience of anxiety, but one time I'm feeling anxious and I'm just like panicky and like, oh my God. And then the next time I'm anxious and it's very active mindfulness. I'm actively generating compassion and feeling that towards the anxiety. So instead of feeling anxiety, now I'm feeling anxiety, my resistance anxiety, right? There's that. It's like, oh no, I don't want to feel anxious. You feel that too. And then on top of it all, I feel compassion for both those things. And what compassion feels like, it kind of feels like this tender, emotional tone, this tender tone of, I'm here for you. I am committed to providing for you, to loving you, to getting your needs met. And it's a very gentle and warm vibe. There's nothing asked. It's simply a gift. It's a giving. And I find that when you give that to yourself, it doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you run away from situations. If anything, I'm doing a lot better in my work as of now than I was a few weeks ago. And I think a lot of that is because my health has been getting a lot better, because I'm managing my emotions better. But it just goes to show you that there's no part of your life that's disconnected from the other parts. They're all the same thing. It's the same biology going through it all. So yes, Tara Brach's book is fucking incredible. The second one, I'm just gonna give this a little shout out because I fucking love it, and that's the Tao Te Ching by Stephen Mitchell. Well, not by Stephen Mitchell. His translation I think is the best. We're not really sure who wrote it. Supposedly Lao Tzu. Maybe it was a couple guys. We don't really know for sure. But it's basically this book of ancient wisdom, and it's not really religious. It's more of poetry. That's all I'm going to say right now. It's my favorite book in the world. It's very short, and it's the kind of thing where you could just read a few lines each morning. I would almost compare it, the closest book I could think of would be Meditations, that, Stoic book that's recommended a lot. But the Tao Te Ching, or the Tao Te Ching, however you pronounce it, is my favorite. So please check that out. Then the third book, and the one that I re-listened to recently, is, I'm forgetting it now. That's what the weed will do you. It's something about your heart with... Oh no, I'm going to have to look it up on my phone now. This is terrible. A Path with Heart by Jack Cornfield. There we go. See, I'm, feeling the ganj. It's cool. But A Path with Heart is a very short book. It's not poetry. It's just like straightforward. And it's basically the story of this renowned meditation teacher, mindfulness teacher, and kind of his life philosophy, as well as his ideas about how you can apply that philosophy to your life. So stuff like, he talks about how he went to this meditation center and basically practiced for a really long time in the art of meditation, But then he came home and he had to interact with his family, which, as we all know, can be a big emotional testing ground. And he found that while he had trained his mind, his heart was still woefully underdeveloped. And when I say heart, I mean your emotional center. It's, I used to be so angry at the hippy dippy language of like your heart. But the more that I dive into this, the more that I see that while there are a lot of different ways of describing certain things, and you can use more flowery language or more, buttoned up language. As you can see, I'm kind of in the middle today, hopefully. I got buttons, but flowers. We're kind of, well, they're leaves, but whatever. I think that there's a lot of value to these metaphors, and there's a lot of value to using that kind of like emotionally charged language. Because there's also a lot of science that goes into this. Like your heart, I mean, it's a big nerve center of your body. There's so many nerves in your rib cage and solar plexus in your stomach. I think it's really incorrect to think of your mind as being primarily generated by your brain. I think it's much safer to say it's just your whole nervous system. And your nervous system has a lot of neurons in places that aren't your brain or your spinal cord even. And this is something that when you talk about like chi or energy, I don't think it's anything magical necessarily. You could say it's transformative. It's the electrical impulses of your body. It's an electrical charge. So there's nothing magical about it in a scientific sense. I'm kind of getting like twisted here, but the point of all of that is to have this idea that a lot of these metaphors make sense. And the idea of your heart and being guided by your heart is making more and more sense to me, because I believe that our American society and a lot of modern society, we're just not that far advanced. Like we're still pretty barbaric. Slavery didn't happen that long ago. We don't really care about people's emotions that much. Like if you're lucky to come from a really good family, then you'll have that. But as a society as a whole, we don't really treat people that well. Other than, if you're like talented, if you're rich, all I'm saying is that we don't really treat the bottom rungs of our society all that compassionately. And I think that shows kind of the group mentality. And what's important about this book is that because of our society set up the way it is, if you don't develop your heart, you're just going to be living in emotional pain for the rest of your life. I almost feel like these past few weeks, and again, this is kind of hippy-dippy, but I feel like my heart is reawakening. I think that around college, I went really deep into this mindfulness game, and I was super into it. And, I was meditating for the past, 6 or 7 years, pretty consistently. But in college, it was when I was really diving into it because I was suffering a lot. And now I kind of feel like I've been suffering a lot and it's coming back. And it's again transformative. Why this book is so great is because you can use your heart to make decisions. You can use your heart as a guide through your life, and the heart has a lot of wisdom to it. It's not this idea that your rational mind and your emotions are separate is just completely false. It's just, even if you think you're being completely irrational, the seeds of emotion are so deep in your mind that no human is able to be truly without emotion. And this isn't like me. I'm not a fucking neuroscience scientist saying this. Sam Harris did an interview with this very, very accomplished psychotherapist and neurosurgeon. I believe his book is called The Master and the Commander. No, that's a movie. It's like The Master and I'm forgetting it. Basically, it's this book about how your brain, you have your two hemispheres, and basically all the things you've heard about the brain, where yes, there are very specialized individual areas, but also everything is very connected within the brain. And honestly, I'm kind of just like being high and not explaining that super well, but I will look up the book and put that in the show notes. Actually, I'm just going to pause this right now. I'm going to look this book up. Okay, so it's The Master and His Emissary by Ian McGilchrist. So it's basically about how our brain is divided into two hemispheres and how it works. But during the conversation with Sam Harris, he mentions this idea that like you can't not use emotion when you think. So basically, if you're not using your heart to navigate through life, you're crippled. You're like this empty version of yourself. And I'm not throwing hate at anybody. I'm just saying that like my experience of like day-to-day life when I'm living from a more heart-centered place versus just being in my fucking head. And again, this doesn't mean I'm being some like, oh my God, everything's so good and there's no problems. It's like there's a fuckload of problems in this world. This world is so fucked up. But when you're able to use your heart and develop your heart, what you can do is some form of emotional alchemy where you transform that feeling of stress, anxiety, powerlessness into something that connects you with your body, something that helps you feel more engaged with life, more able to do things. And this is really an area where I think words, I love talking and I love talking about this, so I will keep trying to describe this. But words can sometimes be not enough to describe the transformation. You know, when you're really feeling anxiety day to day and then you have relief from that and a feeling of safety and of happiness, and that's what's been happening for me. It's like what else matters if you're not healthy and happy, right? It's like a foundational thing. So yeah, extremely, extremely powerful. Okay, I think I've been on this fucking video for a long time. Clearly, I need to do this more often, and I promise you, this will be happening more often. The very last thing, I think we're going to have to stay that for the next video because we've been talking too long, but it's really powerful, so I'm going to give you a little teaser here. Basically, through mindfulness, you're able to generate positive emotions, and the way the brain works and your nervous system works is that if you continue to feel an experience, you will basically embed that experience in your nervous system. And this works both in a good way and a bad way. Like if you're feeling anxious all the time, it can make it easier to feel anxiety in the future. And I've experienced that. But, you know, and I don't want to scare anybody with that. Just want to be honest with you. But the same goes for positive emotions. And in my experience, it's almost like this idea of entropy where like there's all this randomness and kind of like do the negativity bias. Look that up if you haven't heard of it. It's a really powerful idea. Our brains are basically negative by default because in our evolution, it's much safer to be negative than positive. And because of that, if you're in a state of default, mental functioning, you're going to be kind of negative. And that's why I think that our society as a whole is kind of negative in a lot of ways, because it's just like the default setting. But if you are able to, basically in an orderly way, you're creating this positive emotion, it's very powerful. And so to put that a different way, even though I've been feeling anxiety for many years and, it's like had a history with me, I feel like on the days where I'm continuing to practice mindfulness, like I feel way better than even before I was aware that I had anxiety. So all that to say, no matter what point you're at, you can change and transform your stuff radically. Your brain is plastic, which means it can be shaped and changed all throughout your life till the day you die. So there's always a way to change. And on the next episode or video of this, I'm going to talk about how you can basically hardwire that into your brain. And this is something where it's a long-term project, but it's just like, yo, dog, muscles aren't built in a day. I think I like this shirt. I like how this looks. Sexy man. And honestly, I still feel like I would like to make a lot of progress in my body, for example, but I have enough validation from the outside world to be like, okay, my weightlifting has done something. And I bring this up because it's kind of like weightlifting. You got to do it the right way. You want to have a good program, and you want to get support, and it's going to take a while. Like, you should think about this not in terms of like how long will it take to feel better, but rather in terms of what do I want to be heading towards? Do I want to be heading towards a future that continues to look like it is now, or a future where I've been taking these small steps every day to love myself more and to feel better and happier each day, and feel more calm? Like, I feel like I've been able to really relax, which I haven't been able to in quite a while. So it feels really nice. And I'm really glad that I'm recording this in the midst of it all. If nothing else, I can rewatch these videos to see kind of like more in the trenches when you're going through it, how you're feeling. Okay, guys, I'm going to end this here. Watch the next video because I'm going to talk about Tara Brock and how she explains that you can like install positive emotions in your brain as traits. Like you feel the emotion and then it becomes a trait that you just experience even for you, weren't thinking about compassion that moment. And I've experienced that too. It's pretty nice. Anyways, this is way too long. Please give me your comments in the the YouTube really rewards videos that have comments. And so I want to spread the word about self-love. I feel like this is something that's really important. Our mental health is being challenged right now, and I think we can all emerge from this better. But I do think that self-love, at least for me, is a key. And if you think self-love is something that you believe is important, I would encourage you to share this video, but that's a lot to ask. So maybe just if you could comment and like and subscribe, that'll help out the algorithm and help more people see this content about self-love and mental health. So I appreciate you, and until next time.